The wind came first, long before anyone noticed the girl. It came howling across the open prairie like something grieving, dragging needles of ice through the dark. Snow fell sideways, thick and blinding, erasing fences, roads, and names. And there she was, tied to a fence post at the edge of the Crow property. Her body bowed beneath layers of frost, her breath shallow. Her wrists bound so tightly the rope had already bitten into skin. The fence groaned under the weight of the storm, and she with it, a living thing mistaken by the night for something already gone. Eliza Crow did not scream. The cold had stolen that from her hours ago. Instead, she counted. Each breath was a small promise she whispered to herself, each one harder than the last. Snow clung to her lashes, turning her world into a white blur. Somewhere in the dark, she imagined the voices of the town, low murmuring, passing judgment as easily as they passed the salt at supper tables. They had always spoken about her as if she were weather, unfortunate, unavoidable, best endured from a distance. She thought of the word wife and how quickly it had become a shadow. Her husband had been gone a year now, buried beneath hard earth and harder silence. Fever, they said. Weak blood, they said. But afterward, his family had looked at her as though she'd carried the sickness in with her breath, as though her presence alone had tilted the world off its balance. Tonight was not the first punishment, only the coldest. Inside her chest, shame settled like a familiar ache. She told herself not to fight the rope, not to waste strength. She had learned long ago that resistance only brought more rules, more quiet cruelties dressed as correction. The storm roared louder, and Eliza lowered her head, thinking not of rescue, but of endurance, of surviving one more minute. In town, a lamp glowed faintly inside the general store. 2 women stood near the counter, their voices hushed but sharp. Crows finally did something about her, one said, pulling her shawl tighter. Can't blame them, the other replied. Bad luck follows that girl like a shadow. Outside the saloon, a man spat into the snow and shrugged. Family matter, he muttered. No one saddled a horse. No one asked questions. Silence in Ashford Ridge had always been the cleanest way to keep one's hands free of guilt. Caleb Harlan was riding home when the storm found him. He'd meant to be back before dark, but time had slipped the way it always did when a man lived alone. His ranch sat miles west, a lonely spread of land that knew him better than people ever had. The snow had thickened fast, swallowing the trail, forcing him to trust his horse more than his eyes. Old Boone slowed suddenly, nostrils flaring, hooves stamping uncertainly. What is it, boy? Caleb murmured, leaning forward. That was when he saw the fence post, a crooked line rising from the white. At first, he thought it was a scarecrow or a torn blanket caught in wire. Then the shape moved, just barely, a shudder that did not belong to wood or cloth. Caleb slid from the saddle and trudged closer, the wind clawing at his coat. When he saw her face, pale and rimmed with ice, something in his chest gave way. He had seen that look once before, on someone he had been too late to save. The memory struck him like a blow. Easy, he said, though he didn't know if she could hear him. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. She did not ask who he was. She did not beg. Her lips moved, shaping words the wind nearly stole. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to be trouble. Caleb swallowed hard. He took his knife and cut the rope with hands that refused to steady. The fibers snapped, and her body sagged forward. He caught her before she fell, wrapping his coat around her shoulders, pulling her close enough that she could feel another heartbeat beside her own. You're not dying out here, he said, voice low and certain, as if saying it made it true. He lifted her onto Boone's back with care, settling her in front of him, shielding her from the wind with his body. She weighed less than he expected. That scared more than the storm. They rode without hurry, because panic would only waste what little warmth she had left. Eliza leaned back against him, her breath shallow but steady. She noticed small things, the way he adjusted the reins to block the wind, the way his gloved hand never pressed too tight. He did not ask her name. He did not ask why. In that silence, something inside her loosened, just enough to breathe. The storm thinned as they reached Caleb's ranch, but another kind of tension waited at the gate. Lanterns flared in the dark. Elias Crow stood stiff-backed in the snow, his wife beside him. faces carved from anger and cold. "That woman belongs to us," Elias called. "You had no right." Caleb dismounted slowly. He did not raise his voice. He did not step forward like a man looking for a fight. He simply stood between them and the girl still wrapped in his coat. "She was tied to a fence in a blizzard," he said. "That's all the right I need." Margaret Crow's eyes flicked to Eliza, sharp and dismissive. "She's being disciplined." The town had gathered now, drawn by the storm and the raised voices. Faces hovered in the lamplight, curious, uneasy. Caleb felt the weight of them all. He thought of the times he had looked away, ridden past trouble because it was easier. He thought of the promise he'd made to himself after the last winter took something he loved. "She's not property," he said, louder now, steady as iron. "She's freezing. And she's done being punished." Elias stepped forward, jaw tight. "You don't know what she's done." Caleb didn't look at him when he answered. He looked at Eliza. "Whatever it is," he said, "she comes with me." The words settled over the yard like fresh snow. Clean. Unarguable. Something changed then. Eliza shifted, standing on her own feet for the first time that night. Her knees shook, but she did not fall. "I didn't bring a fever," she said quietly. Every face turned toward her. "I didn't bring the bad luck. I tried to be good. I tried to be quiet. I just want to live." No one interrupted her. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Elias opened his mouth and closed it. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't sound like cruelty stripped bare. One by one, the townsfolk looked away. The crows retreated into the dark, their authority unraveling without a single blow struck. Inside the cabin, warmth returned slowly. Snow melted from Eliza's hair, dripping onto the floor like the passing of a long night. Caleb poured water, set a blanket over her shoulders, then stepped back, giving her space. "You can stay," he said, "as long as you need. No promises, no debts." She nodded, eyes bright with exhaustion and something else. Relief, maybe, or the fragile beginning of trust. Later, when the fire burned low and the storm was only a memory pressed into the hills, Caleb sat by the window and watched dawn creep in. Eliza slept in the next room, breathing easy for the first time in months. And if you're listening to this now, let me tell you what that night teaches. Long after the snow has melted, cruelty often wears the clothes of tradition. Silence can wound deeper than fists. But dignity, once returned, has a way of standing taller than fear. Sometimes salvation doesn't come with thunder or speeches. Sometimes it rides in quietly, sees what others refuse to see, and says simply and bravely, "You're not alone anymore."